Every day we are surrounded by seemingly ordinary people, but if you pull back a layer, you'll find an extraordinary story. Interesting Vancouver is an event that gives people the chance to share that story, whatever it may be, with their peers, and talk about what they feel makes them truly interesting. From your perspective, what is Interesting Vancouver?
Interesting Vancouver is an opportunity for people, whoever they might be, to tell their story. I think that we have a tendency to only look at things that are extraordinary as being interesting, when really ordinary is interesting. It's the person behind the story, the thought, the idea that they want to share. While I might be up on stage talking about my story and perceive it to be interesting for people to hear, there's everybody in the audience who also have interesting stories. And it's just really about the people who make Vancouver interesting if we just scratch below the surface.
I know you can speak from personal experience. Why do you believe something like this is important?
I like that you gave me that get out of jail card free. Why is it important? So I've been spending a year going around talking to strangers every day for the year 2014. And in that experience of connecting with people, I feel more of a sense of community. I feel a belonging. It's lifted me in a way that I feel more ready to connect. And I think it's important if everybody was to be able to get out and connect and just, stop talking about necessarily just the weather or the bus waiting and actually get to know that person that they're talking to, or at least show empathy and understanding and listen to what a person has to say. I think that it would be a much more pleasant world.
In your opinion, what makes Interesting Vancouver different than something like TED Talks?
A great question. TED Talks is a lot more regimented in terms of you memorize a speech, you have 18 minutes to present it, it's on one idea, and they are ideas that are worth sharing, most definitely. I think TEDx is a little bit more from a broader perspective looking back, whereas Interesting Vancouver is actually about people who live here in our city and who are doing interesting things here in Vancouver.
What do people generally say? What are their reactions when you say you're in the business of taxidermy?
People are usually surprised. It's not something that you hear very often when you talk to somebody. A lot of people think it's weird, but then a lot of people are generally very fascinated by why I do it and how I got into it.
Let's talk a little bit about that. How did you get into taxidermy?
I'm a bit of a collector. I actually started collecting a couple of years ago because I finally have the space to own a few pieces. And it's whilst I was collecting that I was absolutely in awe by the amazing craftsmanship of the taxidermy pieces. And I'm one of those people that really like to know how things are done. So I looked into classes and options to learn how to taxidermy and couldn't find anything. So it was pretty much a bunch of research and YouTube videos and asking a lot of questions, and I taught myself how to do it.
Now, it says in your bio that essentially getting into taxidermy almost saved you. Can you explain a little bit about what that means?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when I first started learning how to taxidermy, I did a couple of pieces, but it was more of a hobby, just something that I did on the side whilst I was working. And then, unfortunately, a year and a half ago, I suffer from depression, and my mental illness went pretty downhill, and I ended up in hospital after an overdose and in a psychiatric unit for over a month. It was just during this time that my best friend, who is another artist as well, she was actually starting up her own business, and I remember asking her in a hospital, is it possible for me to do something, with my mice and my taxidermy skills? And she said, yeah, of course. So it was just a bunch of ideas that we came up with, but once I got out of hospital, it really gave me something to focus on and do. Haven't had to quit my job because of everything that had happened. So yeah, in a sense, it really did save me. I really felt like the creative process got me a lot better.
You're speaking at Interesting Vancouver. What are you planning on sharing at that?
I'm pretty much going to be planning and sharing my journey of how everything began, why I got into it, all the way through to me starting my small business, which is called Owl and Windsor, all the way through to the achievements that I've made in such a small amount of time, and being pretty open about, my mental illness as well, and the fact that you can pretty much do what you want if you put your mind to it. There's nothing kind of really stopping you if you really want to do it.
You're 13 years old. Now, I'm sure people tell you all the time that you're so young, but you've accomplished so much already. How do you feel about that?
It's amazing that I've cooked with all these amazing chefs, but it's kind of my road to becoming a chef one day in myself, and it's just I'm learning what they've learned, and they're teaching kind of what they wanted to avoid, but they couldn't have. So it's amazing to have all those great mentors.
You have cooked alongside some amazing chefs like Vikram Vij and Ned Bell. What are some things you've learned from them?
I've learned that you always need to be patient in a kitchen. You will mess something up or burn it or forget about it 1,000 times. That's okay. You need to figure it out and always work with it and always be prepared when you're going into a kitchen. There's a thing called mise en place. It's when you have everything ready before you start. You triple check 4 times, make sure you have everything ready before you start so that you don't run into things that will screw it up.
You're speaking at Interesting Vancouver. Can you tell me what you plan on sharing with the audience?
With the audience, I'm going to share what I've learned and kind of my road to when I started to now and what I want to do when I'm older. So I want to be a chef, obviously, but what I'm going to do, I don't quite know yet, so we'll see.
So what kind of message, what's the core message of what you can kind of give to people?
I want to show that anybody can cook. I have a lot of friends, they're older than me, and they say, oh, I can't cook. And I'm like, no, you can cook. You just need to discover it. They'll say they can make cereal and toast, and they just don't know you can look in a recipe and follow it, and you can make an amazing dish. You just have to try. And you need to get kids in the kitchen, adults who don't know how to cook in the kitchen. You just need to get everybody cooking, because they will figure it out.
If you want to learn more about your fellow Vancouverites, visit interestingvancouver.com. For City Lights on Novus TV, I'm Nicolle Hodges.